All right, let's dive into the KTS. It is a long-range LMG. It has a slow rate of fire, one of the slowest, but it has a great muzzle velocity when you get that extended barrel on there. The damage model is okay, it's pretty on par with the rest of the LMG bullets, but what's funky about this gun is because of the slow rate of fire, they compensated with that with very little bloom and very little recoil, which means it's really designed to be kind of that long range engagement. You can see the number of bullets to kill, 4, 5, and 6, pretty standard for most of the LMG class. That being said, there is an attachment you can put on there to help you with that time to kill. So let's dive into a little bit in terms of how the KTS functions. Let's dive into the firing range. And you can see if we just aim at this target way far down, I'm going to pull the mouse just kind of gently down to try to just keep our uh, aim as best we can on there. Even if we don't even pull the mouse down, it's got very little recoil, right? We'll just aim for the guy's stomach, right? Not a whole lot of recoil. Like, well, not even without even moving the mouse around much, it has very little recoil. So even with no attachments whatsoever, if you just kind of aim for the center of the guy, kind of gently pull down, you can drop him pretty quick. Partly because we do get some headshots in there. So laser accurate in terms of a gun. Now that being said, when you think about building the attachments, we'll get to into a little bit, you can offset that bullets to kill by going to either hollow points or synthetic, depending on how many points you've had available to us. With that damage being 17 damage per bullet when you get to the far distances, which was what this gun is meant to do, the hollow points will actually, if you can get 3 body shots, you can do like 3 body shots and then 2 headshots, and then you'll take the target down. So it's going to shave 1 bullet off the time to kill only if you can land 2 headshots, right? So when you think about using this gun in terms of some of the attachments, that hollow point, or if you have the extra points laying around, you can go up to synthetic, but the difference between hollow and synthetic is nil. It does not change the bullets to kill. In both cases, you're going to need 3 body shots and 2 headshots, and that'll drop you down 1 bullet to kill at those longer distances. And then the same is going to be true for the mid-range and then your short range. If you can land the 2 body shots and 2 headshots in the short range, or 3 and 2, etc., etc. So feel free to jump up to the hollow points, and we'll get into some of the builds we have for this particular gun in just a moment. But I want to talk a little bit about how to handle recoil in terms of both the grips and the muzzles. All right, so let's dive into the grips. We're actually going to do the grips and barrels together in this one little segment just to help you think about it. So again, we're just standing at the far end of the room and just doing a full auto, emptying the entire clip. And I want you to see this is what makes the KTS special. So on the left, here's the recoil pattern with no grip whatsoever. Then we do the slight grip and then the moderate, significant, greatly, etc. And then obviously we're going to talk about the heavy barrel in just a moment. But by and large, the grip doesn't seem to make much of a difference in terms of how you're going to utilize your points in this gun. What it's really doing is these opening shots, it's helping a few more of them hit in the lower, so I don't really have to pull down quite as hard with the mouse, but you really aren't pulling down much at all anyways. So I would say if you need to spend your points elsewhere, the grips don't seem to make a huge difference compared to just having no grip whatsoever. If you feel you must put a grip on there, then just go with one of these cheap ones. It does just as good of a job. That being said, when we talk about barrels, you're going to want to use the heavy extended barrel. What the heavy extended barrel is doing is over time, it's helping you a little bit with the recoil. So if you put no grip whatsoever and you put the heavy extended barrel on, its recoil pattern fairly similar to its base recoil pattern, but those opening shots, a few more of them are hitting on the lower side, and the amount of spread you're seeing, it's a little bit tighter compared to having just the grips on there. So I want to back out and show you what I'm talking about. So there is the heavy extended. Just a quick note about the short barrel. Yes, it improves your hip fire. LMGs are terrible for hip fire. You really don't use hip fire, especially with this gun, because it's really meant for long range. So there's not really a good use case to put the short barrel on there. So if you're thinking about how to utilize your points, it doesn't seem like putting a grip on it is really worth it. Just use the heavy extended barrel and auto fire, and then pull down a little bit on your gun, and then save your points in terms of using the underbarrel slots for something else that you might need, which we'll go into a little bit in our builds in just a second. All right, so let's take a quick look at the muzzles and how the muzzles are affecting the recoil pattern again on full auto. So again, we're shooting like usual from the opposite side of the room. So not a super long distance, but it gives you a good indication of what's happening with the different muzzles. So again, on the far left, we have the lower row, which is just the pure muzzle with no other attachments on it. And then we put on the brake, then the linear comp, and then we'll get into all of the suppressors, the standard, the suppressor, the long suppressor, the lightened, and then finally the CBQ. I would say on like just a casual glance, it doesn't seem like that bottom row there's a pretty massive difference between any of them. I would say that the linear comp definitely makes it kind of shoot up a little bit more, but you're getting maybe a few more bullets hitting, and over time that spread is pretty tightly packed. Compared to just the raw, like we're not getting as much left and right recoil with that linear comp. So I would say there's probably a use case for the linear comp. I would say finally, which is odd in this particular gun because then it's very easy. You just kind of pull straight down. You're not really well shots, firing left and right a little bit to it. Where we have the brake definitely keeps it pretty tight. You don't have to pull down quite as much, but you do seem to have just a hair more left and right. Are you really going to notice it? I don't know, with netcode in the mix, who knows? We'll really see about that. In terms of the suppressors don't really seem to make a huge difference. It seems like the light suppressor, as usual, does the best job at keeping that recoil pattern pretty tight and not making you have to pull down quite as hard. So I would say the light suppressor and then the linear comp or even just a pure plain old brake. But ultimately, all of them, they help to a degree, but not a ton compared to just the base recoil pattern. Now the row above it is when we put the heavy barrel on with the same exact muzzle. And so you see what the heavy barrel is doing, that heavy extended barrel is doing compared to, so here's the light suppressor with just a standard barrel. Then above it, you've got the light suppressor with the heavy extended barrel. Notice the difference that heavy extended barrel makes when you stack it on top of the light suppressor. You've got a really tight recoil pattern compared to without the heavy extended barrel. And this is why I keep suggesting put that heavy extended barrel on there. It's just tightening up the recoil pattern over time on top of whatever particular attachment you're using. So again, if you want the tightest pattern, the linear comp would be the tightest pattern. It's just going to kick upward very fast. But as long as you can pull your mouse down a little bit to keep your crosshairs on the target, you're fine. If you want something that's just as good without as much kick, then the light suppressor seems to do just fine. I would say one quick note about the long suppressor. It does almost as good as the light suppressor does, but you do have a little bit of weapon sway. Since you're going to be constantly moving and adjusting your mouse, I don't think it's the biggest deal because it's not like you need the very first shot to hit like you do with like a sniper rifle or something like that to it. So feel free to lower some of the point usage and drop out of the light suppressor and down to even just a standard suppressor is pretty tight. And so ultimately, like you don't even need a muzzle at all. As long as you've got the heavy extended barrel, the muzzles make a bit of difference, but not a ton of difference. But obviously, the tighter you can pack those bullets, the better it's going to be for you. All right, let's get into builds for this gun. There really is only one build for this gun to use it as it's designed. I play a ton of Battle Royale, and so this is my go-to. You can see it's favorited. So this is the way that I run the KTS, whether I'm in Battle Royale or if I'm in just regular gameplay modes. I will adjust the scope, but largely everything else is going to be the same. It all centers around getting those hollow points in there so that I can get that additional bullet taken off in terms of how many bullets it's going to take to kill somebody if I can land those 2 headshots. Because it's so accurate, I try to do that. Really, the magazine is kind of your choice. I don't find that I need aim down sights speed up with this particular gun because I'm engaging at long range. I'm often looking down the scope. I try to go with the lightened suppressor as much as I can, and then the heavy extended barrel. Between those two, it helps keep the recoil to a minimum because I'm trying to land every one of those headshots as much as I can. And then to additionally support that, I went with the ribbed vertical grip. Between those 3 attachments to help with the recoil and the bloom, even though there's very little recoil, very little bloom, with the hollow points, I'm a lot more successful at landing those 3 body shots, 2 headshots, and then we can take somebody down when I'm in the regular game modes. And then obviously it's a little bit longer when you dive into Battle Royale because they have the armor plating on. That being said, when you're engaging in Battle Royale, I tend to do a 5x scope. Sometimes I'll drop down to a 3, just depending on where we might be landing, what we might be doing. But I kind of switch back and forth between the 3 and the 5 scope. That's kind of the build that I run at long distance. You could make it an assault rifle, and I've used it this way in the past because you can bring its aim down sight speed pretty low. Like you're talking assault rifle level low. That being said, it's difficult to get a lot of kills because the rate of fire is so slow. You're going to lose some gun battles when you're just, staring at each other. It has a pretty steep penalty for movement. So I run a blue laser when I'm in regular mode if I want to run it as an assault, which I don't really do very often because it's so slow, but you could put a blue laser on there to help compensate for that. But in the red sec mode for it, or if you're doing long distance, plant your feet, don't move. There is quite a stiff penalty, and you don't have enough points when you're putting those hollow points on to also get a blue laser. Not to mention the blue laser kind of gives you away a little bit, so this was really designed to be quite a bit of movement there. With an angle grip and then the base suppressor, as you saw earlier, it doesn't really matter what muzzle you put on there. In close ranges, none of them really make a huge difference in terms of the recoil. And then I went with, just a fast magazine so I can reload quicker when I'm kind of in the throes of it. So if you need like a, fast-paced gunplay mode, you're definitely welcome to use that. But again, I'm going to go back to this is like the bread and butter of how this gun is meant to be played, where it shines. As with all these guns, the attachments are not going to fundamentally change the gun. The attachments can just accent the pieces that the gun does even better. And this gun is laser accurate, and so you can use a few attachments to make it even more accurate, and then really capitalize with the headshots with some of those hollow points because it is so accurate. So, fabulous gun. If you're not using it in Battle Royale, you definitely got to give it a try.